special one of my own. No, I'm joking. So we should mention that Dr. Tom Farrelly has recently been made senior lecturer. Woo! Senior Gasta master, the elder.
Senior fellow.
I know I'm only just a fellow, not a senior yet. That'll be next year.
Oh, I am.
You're a senior.
My senior fellow at HE.
Senior fellow as well. We'll have to get a few more accolades in there, huh?
So,
no, I'm delighted to be with you here today to welcome Tom to do his Gasta thing. I am a graduate of the Gasta programme, a Gastateer in 2019, I think. I haven't done it again since, and there's a good reason. So Tom's almost as good as me. He's part of the Farrelly clan, but clearly, Farrell is far superior. That is the first thing he said to me when I met him about 10 years ago. He introduced me down in Tralee, and he made that exact joke. So that's back at you, Tom.
You're welcome.
So I'll stop going on and stop slagging Tom and let the Gasta games begin.
Thank you. It actually struck me this morning. If you got a chance to see Catherine Cronin and Laura which I probably made a mess of that. They talk about, and they're serious academics. I pretend to be a serious academic when I have to. But they talk about, you bring what tools you have, and the things we battle in higher ed. I'm trying to battle boredom. And late afternoons at conferences. When I organised the Gasta Goes Global, we do need a bit of care. We need to have a crack, and we need to smile. So I was actually thinking to myself, do you know what? In my own way, I'm doing theirs. Not as good as them, not as serious as them, but you know what? God knows in academia there's enough po-facery, isn't there? So today we're going to have a bit of crack. 5 minutes means 5 minutes here. If you haven't been to a before, I'll get the whole crowd to count in our presenters. Hain, do, three, cahar, cuig. When we shout Gasta, the clock starts. I am going to ask Ronan Bray, I didn't get a chance to act as my timekeeper, if that's okay. When I'm going to sit down there, when you have 10 seconds to go, I'll stand up. And when you see me standing up, you know you have 10 seconds. When the time is up, I'll get the crowd to shout, Hain, do, three, cahar, cuig, stad. I don't care if you're a full professor, a dean, James Dean, Dean Martin, the vice provost, I don't care. There's a certain fairness about this sort of academic bloodletting. It is about a serious message, and I'd always say to people, you're giving a shout out to some project or some research and stuff. If I woke you up and said, what's your project about? That's all it is. If someone stimulates something here, reach out to them. Contact them on Twitter, stop them over to coffee, or even better, stop me over the point to introduce it to them, which is even better. But there is a seriousness about it, because we've all sat there and said, oh my God, I wish they'd ever finish. No matter how rubbish these are, I'll stop them after 5 minutes. I'll put you out of your misery. Not them out of their misery, I'm putting you out of your misery. I think that's the fair thing. So are we ready to get rumbling? Okay. Carina, Moira, step in. Now, you say, why are they willing to do this? Is it for the academic accolades? No. For the badge. I've been ghosted. Designed by Brian Mathers. If you haven't come across his work is absolutely excellent. But no, it's at the end of it, oh no. Like the blankety-blank checkbook and pen. Coasters. Or beer mats, whichever you prefer. Oh, I'm telling you. No expense was spent here. So are you ready to go, ladies?
We're ready for you, Tom.
I don't care whether slides or not. That's not my job. I just make the magic happen here.
Oh, it is.
That's all.
Hold on. Okay. We're ready for you, Tom.
Yeah. Is that with your draft, was it? Or is that... You got your proper slides? All right, so. Yeah. Well, fair play, girls. It's really good to see it there. Are we ready, everybody? We'll just start off nice and handy. Get the hands up. You've had the tea, you've had the bickies, wherever it is. Put down the laptops. Are we ready? A hain. A just. Rubbish, that's rubbish. No, stop. Do you understand the whole principle of being here today? Rob Lowney, put down your laptop. No one is safe. I'll run up to the back. I will run up to the back and make you put down your laptops. That's it. Are we ready? A hain, a doe, a tree, a car, a cuig, Gasta.
Go. Okay. So thanks, Tom. Our showcase for the next 5 minutes about transforming the student experience in Ireland through learner empowerment with the N-TUTORR Project. And what is this all about? There is 7 partners across the whole country, including all of the new technological universities and the Institutes of Technology, and we're supported by TIA and, of course, the Higher Education Authority. To sum it up quite quickly, we have 9 very ambitious work packages, 5 themes, there's 3 streams, we've 7 partners, as I mentioned, and a whopping €38 million, all funded by Next Generation EU. So, and did I mention there was 9 work packages, very, very ambitious work packages, all of which has to be delivered by December 2024. I won't get a chance to go into all of this, but these are all our partners and leads across the sector that are leading the various elements of the 3 streams, 9 ambitious work packages I mentioned. And under the N-TUTOR themes, we have 5 fantastic themes around academic integrity and assessment, digital transformation and teaching and learning, education for sustainability, EDI and UDL. And Moira's going to do the next one.
We're going to talk to you about the student empowerment stream, which is stream 1, and that's the stream that we've been working on. And the aim is to transform the student experience by empowering students and staff and developing sustainable digital ecosystems. There's 2 key initiatives at the moment, the Partners in Innovation Fellowship Scheme and the Student Digital Backpacks. Just to tell you a wee bit about them. Partners in Innovation Fellowship Schemes is a scheme where we give small grants of up to £5,000 to partnerships of staff and students to address challenges relating to the themes on the ground. So we've funded 131 projects across the country involving 400 plus students and staff. That's just a snapshot of some of them on the microsite. This was the launch, was launched on the 23rd of March, and you can see there's everybody all dressed up at the launch, and I'm going to pass back to Carina in our relay for the digital backpack.
Okay, so this is another super initiative. Again, we had this idea around building a student digital backpack for students, something additional, something extra, something inspiring that they can engage with during their time in higher education. So we're just at the stage of proof of concept. We have 100 student champions recruited from across the country that are going to engage with this student digital backpack over over Christmas, over the summer period. And they're going to give us some feedback. And to begin with, they're going to do courses around digital skills. They're going to look at education for sustainability, sustainable development goals. They're going to look at academic integrity, white ribbon, EDI, and all of that. So we're very excited about how this is going to pan out. There's a lot more badges coming down the line on the backpack. Into the autumn, there'll be 20 more that we're curating and working with all of our partners across the country in creating learning pathways on the backpack for our students. So watch this space, and there'll be more to come in the autumn. We'll be launching and piloting with first-year students 2 badges, one on Introduction for Sustainable Development Goals and another badge on academic integrity. So back again.
And just for the final, so that's just an image of our student champions. Just the Sustainable Development Goals have informed the project and every part of the project from the get-go, from the design. These activities are aligned with Sustainable Development Goals, particularly SDG 4 around quality education, but also gender equality. So you can see how that plays out for the partners, fellowships, and the Student Digital Backpack and the Student Champions. And you can also see how the themes align with those Sustainable Development Goals and others. And just the next steps, the work is beginning on the fellowships. This is ongoing, and there'll be a national showcase, so watch out for that in April 2024, maybe with some Gastas, who knows, Tom. 100 student champions started in June, and the Student Digital Backpack has been tested at the moment by the student champions, and we're going to roll out a pilot and I've got 49 seconds left, in September 2023. And thank you, we've done it, Tom.
Don't clap them. They're denying you the pleasure of scholarship. Well done, well done. Now, you talked about badges. Look at, here are the 2 badges. Now, look at that. They put themselves through, and a couple of coasters. Well done. Excellent. No, well done. Not really. The perfect Gasta is 4 minutes and 59. No, it's 5 minutes and 2 seconds, so we got a chance to stop them. So, yeah, you don't get questions. It's not like that. We move on to the next one. So anybody who was doing a Gasta and thinking you get questions, you can question them in the bar over the coffee. So, now, yeah. ChatGPT. It's funny how things have taken over, isn't it? A year ago, we wouldn't have even considered any of this. Darragh, make my day and run over time, will you? Just throw it out. Are we ready? A hain, a doe, a tree, a car, a cooey, Gasta.
Thanks, Tom. So, I think the biggest narrative around ChatGPT is that students are just rubbing their hands going, oh, I can't wait to use it to cheat on this assessment. But that narrative has become such a boogeyman that I found it useful to look backward, to look forward in thinking about how to deal with it. So if ChatGPT was going to be any kind of creature, it would probably be a puka, which is an Irish kind of changeling. And pukas take the shape of children and replace them in their beds at night. So the correlation between a sweet, innocent, original student submission and this nefarious doppelganger that comes out of the ether kind of explains itself. But the way you deal with a puka is kind of obscure. You'd either put it in a fire or you'd brew eggshells. And a lot of the recommendations or voices that I've heard in higher education in general, but also in some research, are kind of similarly obscure. Terminal exam hall exams only, making students do in-person interviews instead of offering any kind of report or project. And I suppose those are equally obscure in terms of helping students to prepare for the world of work, which awaits them outside the walls of the university. And even if they did help catch plagiarism, they're not really doing students any favor if we go to more archaic ways of assessing them as a reaction to things like generative AI. And that brings us on to the next myth, the myth of Pandora's box. And Hesiod, concluding that story, said, so is there no way to escape the will of Zeus. And so it is with ChatGPT in higher education. We can close our eyes and ears and pretend that it doesn't exist. But again, it's not going to disappear for students once they enter the world of work. I'd argue that if we're serious about preparing students for the wider world, it behooves us to work with them as a way of identifying and examining and dealing with the potential threats that generative AI presents. My own worry, for instance, and it's not something I hear talked about much, is not about students using ChatGPT. It's about students, when they graduate, having to compete with ChatGPT for work, for conditions. So in that way, it really is on us to help them navigate it and recognize it in as much as possible. And much like he who must not be named, I think the use of ChatGPT by students does point to a certain unnamed truth in higher education, that by using tools like this, or the willingness to use tools like this, or even the prevalence of things like this, aren't students just doing what they've been programmed to do from a very early age, at least in higher education? And that is, to use the hallowed term, to be as productive as possible. If all that is recognized within a university and within the wider world of work is who got the best points, who got the best grades, then there's a question as to whether students are really learning. And if they're not using tools like this to be more efficient, more productive, then isn't that kind of at odds with what they've been encouraged to do since they were 12, 13 years old? So when we talk about these kind of things, I find we're rarely really talking about tech stuff. More often than not, we're talking about people stuff. And where was it? Yeah, I think as educators, as edtech people, we kind of understand that ChatGPT is just a tool. A tool in and of itself is not bad. It's how it's used by people. It's how it's used by society. That's what determines whether it's for good or for ill. And much like the landscape was changed after the Great Flood, so too there's a different landscape emerging as we speak out there in the world because of things like automation, because of things like generative AI. Now, done right, done well, I think those kind of tools can help manifest a lot of the ethos of the big ideas that this kind of conference has been talking about, to help change systems, to help elevate everybody. Done badly, and we're all living in a Black Mirror episode. We may not exactly be able to determine what kind of landscape will be left after the Great Flood has receded, but I do feel if we're, like much of what was said today at this conference, if we're authentic, if we hold ourselves to the right values, and if we work together with students, then I think we can at least have a say in what that landscape is going to be like for the people who have to live in it. So, what time am I on?
22 seconds.
Sure, I'm going to have a chat. Those are the references that I used. That's where you can go to know more. Shinawil, Gurv Mila Mahagut, and Tom Flores.
Don't forget, start wearing your badges around. Well done. That was good. Oh, excellent.
Am I good to go?
Oh, we wait for the countdown.
All right.
He's trying to deny you your count. We'll have to do a good one now. So we start off swaying on the hand to the left. Do. You ready? Get the hand up. A hay, a doe, a tree, a car, a cuig, Gasta.
Okay, so this feels like speed dating for academics.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so my name is John Meeegan. Oh, pardon me. My name is John Meeegan. So this just got real. Virtual scenario-based learning as an integrative, authentic assessment approach. This was a quote pulled from a very recent focus group with a group of pre-service teachers sharing experiences about that first step into a classroom and that cold splash of water they received when they look at 30 junior infants, children in front of them and really do not know what to do next. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I teach in Hibernia College on a professional Master of Education program. We graduate primary school teachers and we've been doing it for about 23 years now. Our blend is about 45% online and 55% face-to-face. So to set it in the context, this research project is a funded project through Quality and Qualifications Ireland. There was a tranche of funding made available to higher education institutions for this 12-month period to really look at assessment was the underpinning theme and really the focus on how program learning outcomes are assessed. And again, literature will tell us that very often program learning outcomes are not very well assessed compared to module learning outcomes. So the output of this particular research tranche is supposed to develop toolkits and strategies and frameworks and CPD sessions. So our theme really sat within that idea of authentic assessment and the assessment of program learning outcomes and really doing it in a very explicit way. Through the design and development of a virtual scenario-based learning environment, we aim to really focus on the assessment of classroom routines and strategies for our pre-service teachers in the primary program, and also to look at the idea of the development of self-efficacy and professional excellent primary school teachers. The output of our particular research project will be the actual simulation itself and a thematic design framework. I have no idea how much time I have actually. We're using a design-based research approach. That's 3 phases. We think this is a wonderful approach for this particular project. It's theory underpinned, so we're using Bandura's social cognitive theory, the idea of self-efficacy, to support pre-service teachers before they go into their first physical placement. It's iterative, it's collaborative, it's responsibly grounded. I love that idea of it being responsibly grounded, and it tackles a practical problem that pre-service teachers have. How do you teach classroom management to unruly kids? You cannot bring unruly kids into a classroom in a higher education institution. They go out and do that. All they do is they apply theory without that type of practice. We want to be able to enable them to deliver and practice those key skills in a virtual way, in a very authentic way, in a safe way, but also in a non-assessed space. So the milestones to date, we have, I was hoping to share a few more findings of the qualitative piece, which is just phase 1. That's actually complete. We're doing the analysis now. The next step really is to move from phase 1 into the design process, that'll be iterative prototype cycles, which will be scripted. I'm going to show you some particular design representations that we're kind of toying with at the moment, but nothing is set in stone as of yet. That's another wonderful thing about design-based approach. You can always reiterate and go back into the literature. And the end of phase 2, which we hope will take place in autumn time, we will have a high fidelity prototype that our autumn 2023 students will be able to actually engage with and complete prior to their first school placement. So the idea will be, it's a mixed methods underpinning approach within this design-based research, so it's qualitative and quantitative, and finally a quantitative piece as well. And we're hoping to see an improvement in teachers' self-efficacy. That's the overall aim. So some of the ideas we're floating with, using animations is one particular way. Using a branch-based scenario, so you make a decision, something happens, you make another decision, something else happens, and so on. We're looking at using perhaps real-life videos, again, of classrooms and teachers in practice, or scenario-based learning. Now, what will ultimately happen, we believe, is a hybrid of those types of approaches. And then there's also the ability, perhaps, to go another step into perhaps VR, but those initial design representation proposals are something that we're still toying with as a group. It's very exciting and it's very innovative, but ultimately we want to build something that other professional programs can adopt. I'm finished.
10 seconds.
I'm finished. Oh, no, I'm not. No, I was going to say questions.
Well done. No, that's...
Okay, yeah, no questions.
No, there's no questions. That's
great, thanks a
yeah,
million.
not at all. Sorry. No, but as I said, and I really do mean it, when people are up here talking, it's as much about the message that they're delivering, not just a question now. We don't do that, we move on. But please reach out to people. People are giving some really good ideas, and so there is a seriousness to it. But as I said, it's a sort of academic speed dating, come Colosseum.
I'm just waiting for...
Oh, yes, yeah, no,
No, for... Okay, it's looking a bit funny.
Very good.
Ah. Yeah, it shouldn't be double.
I'll have to start singing now in a moment if we don't. Way out of that. Here we go. Oh, I just did my party piece.
Turn it off and turn it on again.
No, I think we're okay, are we? You might be saved for me singing.
There we go.
Ah, pity. It's good.
Okay, so I'm going to start.
Oh, no, we won't. Oh, no. Oh, no. No.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Hey, and I do at 3 o'clock. Go on.
Don't go on. You're denying me my moment. Okay, we started off on the left. We're going to start off on the right. Are we ready? A hain, a doe, a tree, a car, a coig, Gasta.
Good amount. So my Gasta is going to be on the backward design. My name is Anna Mach, and I've been working with the Limerick and Clare Education Training Board for a long time. I work on the further education side of things. We have become huge in the whole of Ireland. We're part of one of the ETBs, and we are moved from just working with adults to anybody going from leaving cert, going into university, upskilling, or coming back to education. So, what's backward design? Backward design, it's part of the process when you can apply it to face-to-face, so-called face-to-face, or you can apply it also to blended learning, and that's what I'm coming from. I've been part of a project designing modules from starting from day one as a blended learning course, which is different from when we started the pandemic. We had to reject the modules that we have from QQI, Quality Qualifications Ireland, and reject them to make them online. So three main, the basics of the backward design, I've highlighted 3 words. I could have highlighted aligns. It's the planning process to ensure that instructional design aligns with the desired learning outcomes. And we have come across, I've heard quite a few times already today, the word desires, desiderata, and so on. 3 main questions when it comes to backward design. The how, the where, the how, and the what. So, what is the where about? Where do we want to go? And alignment is there first because it's extremely important, okay? Those of you who have come across the QQI modules would know that we have this big chunk of information, and on the very end we know what they're going to be evaluated on, okay? So we panic, and we probably do a lot of other things that are not going to be certified. So what we do is we start backwards. So where do we want to go? We want them to reach these whatever number of learning outcomes. That's the basis, okay? Then once we have that sorted out somehow, then we move on, how are we going to evidentiate the evidence for these learning outcomes? How are we going to prove that the learner is learning and that we are instructing, we are teaching properly? So mainly we would focus on two types of assessment, which are the formative and the summative. The summative is the one that has been quite traditional over the years, which is the one single exam at the very end. Whereas we're trying to incorporate, and we are incorporating more and more formative assessments, which are along the way, but not just in a boring way, but in a different way, from being interactive, collaborative, using Kahoot, using Quizlet, you name it, any way that we can get information as in whereabouts the learner is and if we are actually teaching in the way that the learner can follow us. And then the what, how we're going to reach that. And of course, when we are talking blended, we are talking not only being face-to-face and virtual as a synchronous class, but we're also talking asynchronously, okay? So what course materials are we going to use? Now, there is a rumor there's a lot of misinformation in the background now saying when you teach a blended course, there are fewer teachers needed. Quite the opposite. We need more because we have to guide them, or they have to feel that they're guided when we're not there, when we don't appear to be there. And we have to e-moderate a lot of the information that we're giving our learners. So, in a nutshell, it is learner-centered, okay? We have the learner in mind, but we have to make the learner aware of what we're aiming them to go to. The clarity of goals. The clarity of goals provide us the road path for the learners and for ourselves. The meaningful learning, the learning has to make a lot of sense, okay? A lot of the times, have we had to learn off by heart when we didn't really see the meaning of it, okay? Flexibility because, especially when we're doing the formative assessment, we can check every now and then if we need to rejig certain approaches, if one of the techniques is not working, that we're spending too much time on something, not enough in other things. The learner, of course, we have pending over our heads in a good way the UDL principles, Universal Design for Learning. So we have to be also flexible. And the learner has to be flexible somehow to absorb the information. The improved assessment, again, the best design has to do with the best how you plan. And the enhanced learning has to do to make it accurate.
Hain,
and
Doe,
also,
Tree,
we have to make
Car,
sure that
Cooey,
we create
Stod.
a framework.
Thank you.
Okay, good August.
It's not easy. Now that's the Gasta I enjoy. But it is tricky. As I said, it's like the story, son writing to the mother, "Dear Mammy, I'm sorry for writing such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one." So that's the principle there. Emma, where are we at? Excellent. Microcreds. Very appropriate for a micro presentation. But see, like a lot of places call these lightning talks, but they're not really lightning because no one is really strict. We're here. Like, I'm just doing your bidding, by the way. Like, I'm not being nasty to you. They are.
I can take it.
Are we ready? Is everybody a bit comfortable? Yeah, okay, we're going to have to go up and down now. We're going to go up on the Hain, down on the Doe. Up on the Tree, down on the Car, up on the Cooey. Because you're all looking at serious. Look, you could have gone to some other rubbish in the other classes, but you signed up for this. Are we all ready? A Hain, a Doe, a Tree, a Car, a Cooey, Gasta.
This is like a workout. Thanks very much, Tom. It's really great to be on the campus here today in DCU, and I want to share some of our experiences with enterprise engagement for microcredentials. There we go. Perfect. So the best place to start is at the beginning. What is microcreds? We're a €12.3 million project led by IUA together with 7 of our partner universities that you can see here. I'm not going to go through them. And enterprise engagement is really embedded in everything we do in microcreds because we have a mandate through our funding from the National Training Fund here in Ireland. And this is really important. Employers pay a contribution into this fund specifically for employee training, upskilling and reskilling. That really gives us sort of this laser focus on enterprise engagement. Very briefly, microcreds has 4 key pillars. So we've got the development of the national framework for microcredentials. So we're aligned with the European definition on microcredentials from the recommendation last year. Our microcreds are level 6 to 9 on the Irish National Framework of Qualifications, and they run from 1 to 30 ECTS. And the aim really here is to get this sort of consensus around what our understanding is of a microcredential in the Irish higher education context. Secondly is the development of what we call meaningful engagement for enterprise engagement, and that's what we'll get on to in a minute. Thirdly is the development of our discovery portal, and that's called microcreds.ie, which I'm very relieved has launched. And my colleague David in the front row there will speak about this tomorrow in much, much greater detail. So we've about 300 microcreds on the website. And then lastly, we work with the universities to really help to develop and support them in the sort of development of these really enterprise targeted, really diverse suite of microcredentials. So I suppose really very outset of microcredentials project, we thought, right, what does enterprise engagement look like currently? So the IUA commissioned the Genesis report. And this gave us key insights really sectorally for the first time into what enterprise engagement looks like across the university sector. And it crystallised for us really the need to create a situation where more active collaboration between our universities and enterprise was possible. And this was through the use of more insightful data, being able to accurately identify the enterprise need, communicate that back into our universities in a sort of a timely and much more agile way, all while being considerate and due consideration to the university's policies and procedures and autonomy, of course. So coming out of the Genesis report, we created a group called the Enterprise Advisory Group. So this is a really influential group that works with us, and they are senior business representatives from all across the Irish enterprise landscape who really can help to sort of shape and guide and inform everything that we do. Then I suppose the next question then we thought, how do you sort of identify what a priority skills gap is? So scientists in me loves a formula. So we decided then to have a look at various myriad of skills needs analysis out there. So regional skills fora, expert group and future skills needs, set up, and so on and so on and so on. Then we knew that there was a lot of stakeholders involved, so from across enterprise, from across the universities. So we thought, who are the right people to target here when we want to talk about microcredentials for priority high-level skills gaps? So coming out of that, we created a pilot scheme which we called Microcred Innovate, which has now turned into something a bit more substantial. And this is really targeted, structured sessions where we bring thematic, really targeted data insights together with key people from enterprise in that particular sector, along with really high-level and sort of key decision-making people in the universities, bringing it together in a really tightly structured format, all online as well, so it makes things a lot easier to organise. So our first sessions was on zero carbon. This then followed by digital transformation. We had a couple of sessions on the SME sector because this is really a critical section for Irish enterprise. Also recently the biopharma chem sector, and we have more upcoming on food and agri, business, humanities, transversal skills, so on. We've also been very effective in mapping enterprise engagement, various different pathways across our university partners for microcredentials. And the result of that really has been the development and rollout of skills-focused microcredentials that have this emphasis on upskilling, reskilling, and the retention of employees, which is a really key factor for a lot of the employers that we come into contact with. The work we've done today as well on microcreds Innovate has been extremely valuable in looking at ways to engage, particularly around the sharing of good practice. There's huge amounts of good practice and good examples of collaboration, of networking, of really meaningful engagement. And we're able to share that now right across the consortium of the universities that we have. We also find as well that this work has a much wider sectoral impact than just microcreds. We find that, for example, in UCC where we have microcredentials, people want to take larger courses in bigger programs. Everyone loves a problem. We'll be able to identify the roadblocks.
Hain, Do, Tree, Tar, Cooey, Stod. Mairead.
Bring in the water.
Bring the water.
Bring the Irish.
I'd say there's something a bit stronger than water in that now. So,
No comment for nacht. Time lost at Gasta.
Gahanawa. Okay, I'm going to keep it handy because we have a bit more energetic for our last one here. Brian, building up here. So I won't ask you to do too much. I won't ask you to sway, move, just simply a straight out number. And that's all. That's all we'll do there. Are we all ready? Are you ready, Mairead?
Ready.
I'm will to Ray.
Time Ray. Lanner of Cunirv.
Gahanawa. A hain, a doe, a tree, a car, a cooig, Gasta.
Diva Chorda. Delighted to be here, delighted to be here with my pal Tom Farrelly to talk a little bit about micro-credentials, the do's and the don'ts. And before I start, I just want to say that all of this is based on a crowdsourcing with my micro-credential colleagues in DCU based on the research and the studies that we've done into micro-credentials and from our own practice. It's not meant to be critical of any of the projects that we're involved in, so please don't take anything to heart if you're one of our colleagues, but rather just an overview of what we've seen based on our experience to date. So there are all the caveats and provisos, and you can't sue us. And it'll move forward. Is it? Okay. So basically, it's all written up there. So the first one is, don't promise the sun, the moon, and the MC stars. There's so many things that institutions have tried to do with respect to micro-credentials. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, is a huge part of it. We know that micro-credentials are not the panacea to every ills and woe that has ever beset the HE or the VET or the further education sector. So really, really importantly, we think it's really important for institutions to understand why they are doing it and not try to address every issue under the sun, moon and stars. In DCU, we set out and we did an analysis of what were our drivers for getting into short form learning, and part of that we were really, really explicit about what we wanted to do. So from that, our advice to those who want and are in with micro-credentials is really to understand why you're doing it and to do it beyond the funding. So we know that there is lots of funding out there with respect to getting involved with micro-credentials, but understanding why you're engaged with short-form learning, I think, is really, really important. And we know that from having engaged with multiple institutions as part of helping them set up how their different micro-credential programs. The other things that we would say is focus on the strengths of your institution. Those strengths could lie in specific disciplinary areas. Micro-credentials that you develop should reflect what you have to add as value added in the disciplinary aspects that you have. If that's agriculture, for instance, you might want to do that and work with the agri-food business, whether it's big pharma, whether it's in the education sector. You really have to understand what is the thing that you bring which will be reflective of the best of what you can serve to the micro-credentials market, because there is a huge amount of short courses out there. The second thing we'd like to probably share is don't assume that industry knows what they want or even understands what we're trying to say. So a lot of times, I think this is, Elaine, thank you for this, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them, Steve Jobs. So I think it's really, really important you take that to heart. Define requirements and clarify terminology and interactions. In DCU, again, we've set about a framework of how industry collaboration, co-construction, co-delivery looks like. We have a framework which we implement across all of our collaborations in respect to that. We're really, really, really explicit about how they're involved and why they're involved. And that goes through the whole life cycle of micro-credentialing, not just on the outcome, which is the micro-credential, but actually as a process of learning. So I think it's really, really important that that's looked at. I suppose the other thing that came back to us was also that a lot of micro-credentials that are currently available, and this is not particular to the Irish market, but across a number of global, is that they are very generic in their approach. They're very providing generic. They're not particularly aligned or defined with respect to real-world business and industry applications. So potentially that you're looking to transversal communication, well, you might want to put that in terms of the global supply model if that's the particular micro-credential that you're developing. So I think there needs to be a framing of micro-credentials to really address business and real-world applications.
Finally, don't repackage current offerings as micro-credentials unless you have an appropriate process to focus on the relevancy, to QA those, and to make sure that that happens. And then the last thing that we would say is set out the characteristics for micro-credentials in your institution. What does that mean? What are the processes that the micro-credential should go through if it is to be called a micro-credential? Because I think we all have to be, as institutions, engaging with micro-credentials, not falling into the trap of the emperor's new clothes, as in what we did before is what we should be doing with respect to micro-credentials. Agus gurb míle maith agad. Now you have to come over because I have a speech. Okay. It's more on an ordum on a glacha hun DCU agus hun mehain because that's it's a play on the GAA Dublin. We will be back for another Sam.
COYBIB. I'm very sorry to loud. Okay, if there was a Mount Rushmore of educational technology in Ireland, this man would be George Washington. Yeah. So, can I ask your help here for a second? If you could just hold this, I'll need it. Because what we're going to do is in an homage to the Icelandic fans, you remember? So we're going to go, Hain. Right? That's probably a little bit complicated, but I like to think that. Certainly our foreigners, the Irish probably won't get it, but the foreigners. Are we all ready? Get the hands up. Are we ready? Yeah. Hain. Do. Tree. Tar. Cooey. Gasta.
Thanks for nothing, Tom. Now, Eden used to be the European Distance Education Network, then the Distance and E-Learning Network, and now the Digital Education Network. This is putting the cart before the horse. Distance education is the future. And to misquote Shakespeare, I've come to bury campus education, not to praise it. Higher education is expensive. Even when highly subsidised, students still have living, travel, accommodation expenses, as well as resources such as books. More importantly, they have the opportunity cost of not being able to work. Now, given demographic change and the resulting increase in cost in pensions and healthcare, governments will choose to spend even less on higher education in the future. But does it need to be this expensive? Distance learners can achieve all of the learning outcomes of campus learners. The willingness of online learning lecturers to exploit technology can make it even better. And it can be cheaper, most obviously in lower fees, but also in reduced travel and accommodation costs, as well as the opportunity cost of being able to work while studying. With technology, of course, it can be even cheaper, particularly when done at scale. So this begs the question, why would an 18-year-old choose to college if a more affordable option emerges? And why would the state financially support 18-year-olds once they realise that there are other cheaper alternatives? These might even be more effective. Employers have always criticised higher education for not producing work-ready graduates. Universities respond with practical and project-based learning. However, such approaches are essentially artificial and not as effective as experience in the real workplace. Now, students could benefit from starting work as early as possible, probably at about 10 years of age. Indeed, academics often report that students returning from internships are more engaged and learn more effectively. So this would beg the question, why not have the student in the workplace for the whole of their programme? Of course, many claim that the campus experience is an important part of the personal development of young people. Now, I told my brother who did an online degree that he wasn't as personally developed as me. So, not only does this claim lack evidence, but it's essentially a slight on those who have never attended full-time tertiary education. Now, a more reasonable argument is not all people are disciplined or motivated enough to cope with the challenge of distance learning when they're 18 years of age. However, there is no reason why this challenge cannot be largely addressed with technology through improved peer communication, mentoring, monitoring with data analytics and intervention. But a better solution might be to slow down the pace of learning. Working students are under less financial pressure to rush through a degree. Delaying the start may even give them more time to mature and develop stronger motivation and better learning habits. Even better, the learning can be designed into the workplace. This will increase the efficiency of knowledge acquisition as well as the motivation. There is no reason why education for any field of work cannot be provided in an apprenticeship mode. But many claim that education should not be vocational in nature. The phrase learning for learning's sake seems somewhat meaningless, but it refers to learning for pleasure and the idea that pure curiosity can lead to many useful innovations, both reasonable points. However, we need to admit that the motivation of the state and individuals for spending on higher education is to improve their lives, primarily through increased prosperity as well as personal development. Those who wish to learn for pleasure now have the whole world of knowledge at their fingertips, much of it structured by leading experts, and can join like-minded groups in online discussion to deepen their understanding. They don't need universities. So when all this comes to pass, what do we do with the campuses? The creation of knowledge is a vocation, and one that we have traditionally reserved for many of the brightest of our young people. If there are brilliant young people who see their future in research, perhaps university is the place for them. That will be their place of work, and from the start they will study their chosen topic and how to create knowledge under the mentorship of seasoned researchers. For the rest of us, we need a cheaper, more effective form of tertiary education, and the most likely best solution is online, work-integrated distance learning. To recap, higher education is too expensive. Governments will have other priorities in the future. Work-integrated distance learning is better and cheaper, and that's where the future is.
That's how you do it, Gasta. Can the people who can just all stand up, please? This is not easy. Anybody can be a presenter. Moira, stand up. Anybody can be a presenter. No, not everyone. Not the people who just done it. That's no. I want them to bask in the glory. First of all, Ronan, well done as my timekeeper. Thank you very much. I knew that PhD would be useful one day. But anybody can be a presenter, but it takes real gumption and guts to be a gustateer. Well done.
So thanks, folks. That was a great session. Thanks, Tom. We'll have a little photo with the Gastateers down here in a moment. Yeah, you're not getting away too easily. So that's it, guys. We'll see you again later on at the dinner. Meeting in the Epic Museum for drinks at 6:45, I think. See you later. Thank you.